Do you know what day is today? Today is Memory Day. And Memory Day is like leg day. I bet you know what is leg day. Something that really boring, something that you try to skip it every time, but well, it's not a good idea to skip leg day or memory day because you end up like this guy. And you don't want to end up like that guy, do you? So, today I want to share with you some memory profile for the most used memory chip and how to tune it in an easy and fast way. I already did the hard part of the job, so if you want, you can copy the profile directly to your motherboard and try it out. But what I suggest you to do is to follow every step of the guide, understand why and when I do something, so you can have a tailored profile that is faster, more reliable, and safer. So, let's get started. As base system, we have a MSI Z590i, the Mini ITX, the 11th Gen Core i5, the 11600K, and various kit of memory. We have the Ballistic with the Micron REv E, the Patriot Viper 4400 MHz C19, that is a good B die. We have the Trident Z 3600 C16, another kit of good B die, and the Sniper X from G-Skill, that is CJR, Hynix CJR, another interesting chip. As we saw in one of my latest video, Gear 1 is the way to go if you're playing like World of Warcraft or other, let's say, old titles that doesn't need too much bandwidth from the memory, but benefit more from latency. So you must check if your situation requires more latency, well, more performance in latency, since less latency equals more FPS, especially if you are playing at high refresh rate. So what you're going to do today is more oriented to the i3 and i5, since the i7 and i9 usually can reach higher frequency in Gear 1. So today we are going to do some tuning at around 3 gigahertz of memory. So in this case, I will be able with this CPU to go at 3300 and 33 megahertz. We are going to tune like C14, safe voltages, but very tight timing, so we can benefit from the latency improvement of the Gear 1, but we can tune the memory to make it even better. I already did a profile for the BDI and the REv E, so now we are going to start with the Hynix CJR. So I'm going to mount the CJR on the board and we can start from scratch, so you can see step by step how to do it. First thing to do is to boot, enter in the BIOS, go into the advanced mode. In this case I'm with MSI, but every board you press F7 and you go into advanced mode. So we are going to do OC. Again, every board have their own menu, so well, you would find easily what I'm going to do. Leave everything at default except the XMP profile. So we're going to enable XMP profile. Make sure that it's in Gear 2, otherwise many CPU doesn't allow you to boot at 3600 MHz in Gear 1. So we select Gear 2, XMP profile, F10, so save and exit, and we enter in BIOS again. Alright, so again, OC or the menu that leads you to the memory tuning, and we check if everything is okay. So we have Gear 2, the frequency is fine, and most important, we have to check that the voltage is fine. So yes, save and exit again, and we go into Windows. If you want to do a proper job, you will need free software. So the first is the timing configurator from ASRock, that you can find the link in the description below to check the timings, because well, I will explain you later why you need to do this. A software to test the stability of the memory. In this case, this is Karhu Ram Test. You have to pay for it like $10 or €10. I will give you some free alternative. Again, the link in the description below, and AIDA Extreme. So in this case, I have the license, but you can find this software for free, and is more than enough to do what we need to do. In this case, is the memory benchmark. Right click and start memory test only. So we will have only the read, write, copy, and latency, because every step of the guide that we are going to do, we need to check if we are making progress or not, because if you are not making progress, maybe you have to take a step back and focus on something else. But you will see that in more details. All right, this is our baseline. So we have these values, and we are going, at least our goal is to improve all of this. And I suggest you to take a screenshot. So every time you have like a checkpoint and you keep track of what you're doing, and every time you change something, do a stress test. Usually I do like something really easy, like 500% of coverage, or if I have time, 2000%. And every once in a while I do like a full extensive test, like a couple of hours, so it will be like 10,000%. So uh, it's boring, I know, I told you before, but the more you check every step, less issue you will have in the future. So it's just about saving time, because if you skip a passage, if you want to do something with haste, at the end you will end up losing more time than do the thing properly. So do the thing properly. So now we are going to the BIOS and we start changing the time. What I'm going to show you now is something quick but effective. Usually I do the things in a different way, but today I just want to show you a quick and easy method. The profile that I prepared are really fast and easy. Everything can be improved, always something can be improved. So everyone have their own method, and I encourage you to develop your own method. So what I'm going to show you today is something really easy and fast, but it's still a baseline that you can improve with time and knowledge. So the first thing I want to do at this point is to see how far I can go with gear 1. So I want to do gear 1. I leave the XMP profile enabled, and in this case I want to try, well, I know that the CPU can do 3333, but for example my 11400, I know that with safe voltage I can run it at 2933. I have to raise too much the voltage to get stable to 3333, but anyway, uh, try with this one first, and then you go to this. So most probably you can run your 11th generation Intel at this frequency. So you change this, nothing else. We go to the configuration profile of the timing, and you take a look. This is very important to know what you're doing, to get confident with the names and where to touch. So now we are going to set the tertiary timing first. So what you're going to do now is to set everything as it is. So just set manual what the BIOS is suggesting. Is an easy way to do the things properly, because if you let the motherboard choose for you, sometimes the motherboard goes very conservative and you lose performance. So once you set this, I suggest you to save a profile, and we call it CJR gear 1. Okay, we save profile. So it's very important to keep a checkpoint, because in memory tuning everything can go wrong, and then if you do a lot of steps and then you have to reset your motherboard, and you're going to lose hours of work. So always keep a checkpoint that is safe and stable, and you know that you can always load that profile and restart from there. Okay, so now I'm going again to the tertiary timing, and I'm going to suggest you something that I saw that is working with almost every kit that I tried. So 6, 4, 6, 6, 6, 4, 6, 6, 14, 14, 14, 14. This is a bit special, and I'm going to explain you later. And again, 6 and 6. So this is a good baseline. And well, this one, if you change this, is you have to is related to this one. So tWTR, and that usually is called tWTRS and tWTRL. So I will leave this in auto, So when you change the other one, this one will change. And now I'm going to show you how to make the changes here that are correct. So F10, save and exit, and we go into Windows. Okay, now that we made the first change, we just change from here to here. So we do a check to see if everything is okay, so if you are going to the right direction. And well, in the meantime, I'm going to explain you something. So when you change those two, they are directly related to those two. So if you want to have a really tight setup, we would like to have this one set to 8 and this one set to 4. So if we move this to 28 to 26, this will be 4. And if we move this to 34 to 30, we will have this one at 8. So next step is to go into the BIOS and change those two. Now I don't do this, but you should check if the memory is stable because you might have error. So I'm going to skip this part because I already knew the results. I just checked and I'm stable, but check every step. So this is our baseline. Let's take a look. So we gain a bit of everything. So we gain like 4 nanosecond, some write, some read, and same copy. But now we are going to keep improving this profile. Alright, now that I checked my memory, I did the stress test, everything is fine. I go to the profile and I save it. Very important. If it wasn't stable, I had to modify something, get it stable, and then save it. So save only if the profile is stable. So I'm going back here. I go down here and I need to put this to 27 and 30. Save and exit. I go in Windows and I check. Alright, so as you can see here with 30 and 27, 26, sorry, now we have 8 and 4. And this is right the number that we want. So now back into the BIOS and we're going to start with the secondary. Once again, I go into the profile, I save the profile, and we go to another step. So now we are going to change other timings. I suggest you to start with this one, tRRD, that is usually called tRRDS and tRRDL. So now we are going to try directly to a very tight number, so it will be 4 and 4. I advise you to boot into Windows and do a memory check. But in this case, I'm going to try as well. I'm going to skip a step right now, but let's try. So I want also to change this one to 16 and tWR to 10. That is considered like very tight, or sometimes they consider it extreme. Again, save and exit, we go into the Windows and we test. As you can see here, we had a massive gain in latency from our baseline, and this is a good thing. Now I'm going to test it for a bit. I will leave this one going for, let's say, 10 minutes, just in case to spot some errors if we have any, and then we keep tuning the memory. Now, after 7 minutes, I have one error. So, what do I do? Now I'm going to the BIOS. I'm going to raise a bit the voltage, since when tuning the timings this low, we need to raise a bit the voltage of the memory. So in this case, we are going to stay to a safe range of voltage, but we have to increase it. So back into the BIOS, we increase the voltage and we retest. The XMP profile of this memory is at 1.35, but 1.35 wasn't stable. As well at 1.4 it wasn't stable, sorry, and now I raised the voltage to 1.45. So save and exit, and we go to do the memory stress test. Alright, now let's pretend that I run this test for at least an hour or two. So what I'm suggesting you is to run the test at least for 2000% of coverage. The more, the better. Alright, the next value we are going to change is tRTP. At auto, we have 12. 12 is considered safe. You can do 10 or 8. So we are going for 8. If it's not stable, we go back to 10. If not stable, we go back to 12. Now that everything is fine, I check the error, again, leave it as much as you can, and then we move forward. The next value we are going to change is tCWL. So usually is 16. That is related to the primary timings. In this case, we are going to leave it as 16 because there's some dependencies, but now we are going to leave it as 16 since it was a 16 and stable, and we move to the next one. So now what I'm going to do is to check if we can tighten a bit the TCL. So I'm going to start with 16. So 16, and I try to boot like this. Okay, I was able to boot and we have already 2 nanoseconds of improvement. So what I'm going to do now is go into the BIOS and change it to 14 and see if we can. Okay, so I was able to boot. The performance are okay. So we have more or less the same number as C16, slightly better, but we don't care. We want to push all the timings down as low as possible. So again, I check carefully and for a long time this one, and I go back to changing the other primary. Now, a common rule is that this timing, so TRAS, is the sum of tRCD plus TCL plus 2. So in this case, it should be 36 if we leave everything like this. But we are going to try to do 18, 18, 34. Save and exit, and we see if we have a boot. If we have a boot, we go straight into the BIOS. Okay, we are into the BIOS, and now, again, what I want to do is to lower by other two. So 16, 16, 32. Save and exit. At this time, I want to go into Windows. When I tried to boot with the value at 16, the system didn't boot. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to reset the BIOS and load the profile that was stable. So I have lost only the value that I was trying to change right now. So reset the BIOS and go and load the profile. I knew that this was happened, but I had to show you what happens in case the thing go wrong. So it's normal that you have to reset the BIOS profile because when you change something, not every memory kit goes as planned, and you end up sooner or later to do something that make the system doesn't boot. So you have to reset and pick up where you left the profile that was 100% stable. All right, again, let's pretend that I left this test for 1 hour or two or more. So stop the test, go into the BIOS, save profile, and next step. Now, what we are going to do is tCWL. Usually, this one should be set for a safe profile to the same as TCL, so this one. But if we want to do something a bit more tight, we can go 2 points lower, so 12. But if you go down this road, you have to remember that if you change that, you have also to lower those two by 2 because they are codependent. Now, save and exit, and we are going to test it if we boot. I just realized that I made a mistake since we dropped by 4 and I only dropped by 2 here. So we have 10 and 6 and we want 8 and 4. So back to the BIOS, I set this to 26 and this one to 22. Alright, so performance are good. And again, let's pretend that I have checked this for at least 1 hour or two and move to the next step. Now, let's tune the tRFC. This is a very important value because it can give you a nice bump in performance, and this is usually where BDIs is better than any other chip. So to do this, there is a formula, but I don't want to keep this more practical than theoretical. So What I'm going to do now, knowing that with 630 is working, I'm going to try to 500. So we are going down with big step, and then if it doesn't boot, I reset and I do something a bit higher. So the usual rule is that you go down by 10, by 10, by 10. When the system is not booting anymore, you raise by 10 or by 20 if you want to stay safe, and you test it for stability. Alright, so again, the performance check is fine. Once again, let's pretend that we are running this test for a lot of time. Stop and go. The next value we are going to change is the command rate. The best is 1T. Let's go for 1N and save and exit. If you noticed switching to 1T, we have a nice improvement here and a bit of latency. So again, test it carefully. Now, last but not least, tREFI. This is to refresh the cell of the memory, and is an important value. It can give you a nice bump in performance. So the more you set this one, you have an increase in performance. But it's very sensitive to temperature, even sometimes between winter and summer. And if you push it too much, you risk that your memory lose the data inside, and you may have some corruption. So you end up like with a bad installation of window and something really a bit of a disaster. So I suggest you to not exaggerate with this. A tight value is 40,000. If you want to stay on the safe zone, is around 32,000. So test it carefully and make sure that you have a good ventilation on your chassis. So once again, save and exit, and we check the result. Okay, so when we do the performance check with this last upgrade to the tREFI, tREFI, call it as you want, you see that we have a big bump in performance. And well, again, check it carefully. And well, this is the end of the road, at least for a quick and tight but easy setup. Next thing we want to do is to overclock the CPU and the ring. That will give you another boost in performance. So now I'm going to do you to show you the comparison between this kit, the CJR, the B-die, and the REv E. But I will go through the CPU and ring overclocking in a separate video, since if you want to do it properly, well, it's gonna take a full video to do it. So now I go back into the BIOS, I change the CPU overclock to 5 GHz, the ring to 44X, so 4.4 GHz of the ring, and we go back here and we compare the performance with the other memory kits that I've tested. Alright, so now we can compare the three kits that I've tested. Here on the left we have the B die, here the Micron REv E, and the CJR. So the best is of course the B die, since we have the lowest latency and good read, write and copy. The REv E is like a 3 nanosecond behind, with still good read, write. The copy is a bit low if we compare to the CJR in this case, but we have a bit more latency. I was able to set the tertiary timing and secondary timings at the same for the three kit. The only thing that changed was the tRFC, that was a bit higher with the Micron kit, and the CJR did a bit better, but we have lost some of the primary timings. So um, between the two, I still prefer the Micron, since they are a bit better and they are also cheaper. So every ballistic, crucial ballistic kit use Micron, and even the cheap one can achieve this result. To find a good CJR, I think the average price for this type of kit is slightly higher. Alright, so in conclusion, when you start to do some memory overclocking, make sure that inside your case there's the right temperature, so make sure there's a good airflow. That is very important. Second thing is do baby step. Trust me, it will pay on the long run, since if you make some mistake and you don't have a stable profile to get back on like a checkpoint, you end up like losing a lot more time. So do it carefully. You can do it between nights, so you can test something, you can play, you can use your PC, and then the second day you start to tune a couple of more timings and so on. So do it with time, but do it in a good way. This video is already long enough, so next time I will try to take all the three profiles that I've made, and I'm going to translate that into gaming benchmark. So I'm going to see the impact of the three profiles, so and then we can consider the price for the kit that allows us to do that kind of settings, and so you can compare the real performance if you do one choice of a memory kit between another. I really hope that this guide will be useful for you, and if you have any issue, I really suggest you to join my Discord server. We are a really great community. There's a lot of people willing to help. This is a topic that may be overwhelming at the beginning, so memory tuning is not easy if you start from scratch. So if you have some question, if you need help, really join my Discord server. It's free. We are a good community and we can help you out, because really I don't want to see any build with poor memory settings, really. So yeah, join my Discord server, or if you want, try to contact me in the comment section. I'll do my best to answer all the comments, but it's kind of difficult for me since I have a lot of things to do. So Discord will be the quickest way to contact me. Well, there's everything. So usual stuff. Like the video if you like it, subscribe for more, and see you in the next one.